Hello. Welcome to Game Guru's Twitch broadcast time of the week. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. GMT, and I'm your host, Lee Bamber, talking waffle for the next 30 to 60 minutes, depending on if I have anything interesting to talk about. Now, the plan, I hear you scream. What are we going to talk about? As past visitors will know, this is live, it's unrehearsed, it's unscripted. We make it up as we go along. I think that is the best formula, and has worked very well for over 40 broadcasts, and we shall continue to do so. Now, you catch me in a very interesting time, because normally I would go into Game Guru and create some levels and do some scripting and all that wonderful and juicy stuff. And in the live chat, if you're joining us in video land, you won't see the live chat, but this is a live broadcast and it includes people posting questions during the broadcast, and then I can answer them in order. But you catch me in an interesting time, because I'm right in the middle of coding some FBX import support. And I really don't want to abandon it right now, because it's getting very interesting with all the models that I've been playing with and stuff. So I had a rather interesting idea, and I'm going to leave it up to the audience to decide what to do. There's a current request that I continue to play around with something I released in the last update called the platform script. The idea that you can have a platform that moves across a gorge or some other area. The player can jump on it, you move across the platform, and then you can get off on the other side, or other things. And there's been a live forum debate on the subject and improving the script and making it do more interesting things. And I was quite happy to stay out of it, you know, just so let the community's own creative juices flow and improve the script far beyond my original design and, you know, my original intentions. And the alternative, and you can get to vote on this in the live chat now, you can yay or nay, you know, to see which one you want. The other one is to watch me for the next half an hour work on improving FBX import support. Now, I must warn you, this isn't very visual, it's going to be a very dry option. But you do get to see some of the internal C++ of Game Guru. You get to see how extremely difficult it is to support all the different kinds of FBX variants and all the confusing bits of math that all need to line up perfectly in a row before you get even the simplest object imported into Game Guru and on the screen. So I'm going to keep my eye out on the live chat to see if there is a preference. You can swing me either way. I'm happy to do both. Maybe half an hour one, half an hour the other. So I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about when I talk about working on FBX. I think I've got the project already open. Yes, I have here. And I'll just show you where I've got up to if I just compile and run the latest tweak. What I have here is a folder in the Game Guru files, Entity Bank Users FBX RAW. These are just a small selection of some of the FBX objects that A, have been sent to me, or B, I've managed to find myself on the internet. And the version I implemented in version 1.13 only really supported a handful of FBXs, like a box, untextured, and a door that animated, untextured, and that was a huge achievement. The problem is, as soon as you tried to load in 8 other FBX models that I hadn't previously tested, not one of them actually came out properly. So you're in a situation where you can create code that will make some objects load fine, but then not others. And when you change the code so the others load, the original objects then fail to load. It's this horrible. It's like trying to squeeze a bubble out of a screen protector. You know, you get rid of one and then another one appears. So it took a bit longer to boot because I'm in debug mode. It's something one has to live with when you're actually compiling in full debug mode. And I've been working on a particular model called Wooden House. Can't remember where I got it. I think I got it from a 3D model website, but a free one. And it's got a texture with it, which is why I got it. So Wooden House FBX. I'll select that, and took me, you know, an hour to get it to be upright. One of the things I noticed between, say, Maya, which is one of the things I'm using to get my FBXs analysed, and Game Guru, is that it seems as though the Maya coordinate system, or at least the export of the FBX, has the Y and Z axes reversed. The only way this building is now being imported upright and on the floor is a rather juicy bit of hack, and I'm calling it hack because I'm pretty sure the original creators didn't intend for me to do this. Right, this is the bit that's fine. You see, you've actually got exploitation of the node, getting the mesh cast into a mesh pointer. Then we're getting how many, what they're called points, which eventually will become vertices coordinates. But essentially it's every dot that you join all the polygons to actually make up a shape. And there's this many dots, and I go through each one and put them all inside this array, and that should really where it ends. You know, I'll have finished exploiting the mesh in that way, and now I've got the points and I can do wonderful things like create a mesh from it. However, I've added this code today. Flips the Z and the Y's. So essentially, if I didn't do this, all the objects, all the raw mesh data as you see it, would actually be flipped. They'd all be on the side. And that was seemingly universal. All the objects seem to come out on their side. So by flipping them this way and also negating the Z after the flip, this building and other objects that I've tried then are upright, which is as you would expect. Now, another problem with FBX meshes is that they can be anywhere in the scene. They're not centered at the 0, 0, 0 coordinate for the raw mesh data. They can be like hundreds of units in any direction, which makes importing them and turning them into entities and using them very horrible. You practically have to write a 3D modeler just to correct the smegging models before you can use them as meshes. And I don't really want to put a Game Guru user through that horror. So I've wrote a little bit of code which scans every 3D coordinate of the mesh and then works out where that mesh is in space. And then it works out, based on the minimum and maximum vertex positions, the center position, the center of that cloud of control points. And then I deduct the center from the original coordinates. Essentially what that does, it drags the mesh from wherever the smeg it is right back to 0, 0, 0. Now I do another slight thing, is rather than get the center of the Y coordinate, I actually get the base, which is the lowest occurrence on the Y axis, and then deduct that, because what that does, instead of having the 0, 0, 0 of the model in the center of the object, it has the 0, 0, 0 at the bottom of the object, so any entity will sit on the floor. So these are what I would call I've hacked them in. If this is the way it's going to have to work for, say, static imports, so be it. I'll add some flags and we'll make it proper and nice. But I gotta believe there's some data somewhere else. And don't say it's the I'll show you the thing I know you think it is, but it isn't, because I've analysed the data and it isn't that at all. If I go to the top, just before I go into the node, each node has something called translation, rotation and scale that's associated with any node. It could be a node for the mesh, could be a node for a skeletal element within the FBX file format. But these don't reflect the changes that are required in the bit that you earlier saw with the hack. So there's some other data somewhere hidden away inside FBX. The documentation doesn't tell you, and there's precious little source code out there to actually have done all this already. So unfortunately it is a case of trial and error, and yeah, it's all been ignored. Not just that line, but all of it. So if we jump back, this is the product of those hackies, and we've got a building which looks right, and we'll get a texture for it. Now remember, we already had the texture, so it's a PNG. Select that, so there's our texture. In the version 1.13, I think the UVs were reversed. I think there was a bug for that. So there's a bit of Z clash there. So that may be the model. You see, sometimes you think, oh, it's a bug with the importer, but actually it was the original model that failed. And I tried loading this into. I got a subscription to Maya LT earlier today, and I imported that same building, and this is what I saw. Yeah, I mean, I can prove it. I'm proving it. On new scene, import, We'll go to exactly the same model folder. Which is there. Wooden house. It's saying that there is unsupported nodes, which is really alarming considering Autodesk created the FBX format. They are the sponsors of it, and yet I've got an FBX that has an unsupported node. Just gives you some small glimpse into how difficult it's going to be to support every single FBX file out there. So it was a blank screen, but now remember, now if I scroll out, there you go. But have you noticed something already? Look how long that building is, and look how short ours is. And the reason is, and I've been playing around with Maya a little bit, if you go to this, you can see you've got scale 2000 and 3000 and 2000. So if I set that to 2000, 2000 I mean, then it should be, yeah, the same as that. So ignoring the scale isn't necessarily a good thing to do back in the code, which is we need to appreciate this scale. Problem is 2000. If you actually did that into the importer, the object would be so big you wouldn't even see it inside the importer. So perhaps there needs to be some kind of camera scaling in the importer. So, for example, you see, you can change the scale of, say, the chap, you know, relative to the building. He's just coming into view now. Oh, by the way, I haven't used the importer for more than an hour. I now hate this scale slider thing. I mean, look at this ridiculous. And you know, I'm going to get diminishing returns. All I want to do is scale this building up by like 2000. It's going to take me quite a long time to actually get there, doing it this way. So I think I'm going to create a new gadget in the tab slider thing. So instead of doing this nonsense, I'll just be able to have a little box, tap into it, then just tap out a number, and then I can play around with it. Maybe, yeah. And there'll be an arrow, left and right arrow, so you can increase and decrease the number. But I think we're getting there. I mean, this looks like the size of a large dollhouse. I don't want to do any more, but I think you get the idea. I'm going to set it to polygon collision. I want it as a static. Don't need to change anything else. And change this shader to an entity basic one. And there's too many choices here. You don't need all them. In fact, most of them are quite redundant. The only two you ever need is character basic and entity basic. So I might reduce this shader options a lot. So if we just save this entity now, I'm going to call it a hut, and then I'm going to find it. It should be quite a small one. You saw the size of the sort of the reference chat character. Now here's a few things that are interesting to me. Very interesting to me. One, why is it at 45 degrees? That is a very interesting question. There was another object that I brought in that was also at 45 degrees, and I was scratching my head for all hour as to why that would be. But it's there, it's in. Size of the start market gives you an idea of how big the building is. I'm not going to change the scale just yet. I'm just going to run it. I'll set it to polygon collision. Let's see whether that works. And it's static, so it shouldn't roll about. And it took me, what, about 2 hours just to get to this point, having to really get my head around this whole coordinate reversal thing. So I'm going to assume that flickering door is some sort of double polygon, maybe like a window or something like that. But I can't guarantee that this model is actually finished. But one thing I'm pretty sure of, the original author probably didn't want a big gap in the side of the building here. So also you'll notice that if you have a model that's seriously screwed up with the geometry and you get near it, I'll show you look at the physics. It's 96% of the, if I go away from it, you know, you got your normal physics at 10%. If you go right up to this thing, 95%. And that's not because it's just a bad physics system, it's just a bad collection of polygons, and the physics had no idea how to push itself away from it because a lot of conflicting and overlapping polygons. So it really is a case of once this model is correct, then the physics will be fast in its proximity. But right now, as we just get a bit closer, you can see there's some strange things going on. Maybe missing polygons, or yeah, I think it's probably just missing polygons. Although that polygon that cuts across the window, that's probably it's a symptom of the same thing. So we can probably have a look at if we are, we're missing one polygon out of a mesh. But I think this is a single mesh. I'm pretty sure of that. So we go back, increase the scale a bit. Yes, I love. Every time you add a feature, you got to watch it because there could be a big knock-on effect, and suddenly nothing works anymore. For example, I have no idea why that happened. I mean, a regular entity, you could just drop it in and scale it, and it's fine. But for some reason, with this particular model, it's fine dropping in like that. But as soon as you try and scale it up, it stops for a bit. Maybe you can do that. No. So whatever the scale widget relies on to get its information from this object is now not got that information. So that's one more thing for the snag list. And you just get a little bit of a glimpse at just saying, oh, let's just add FBX. It's really not as simple as that. You have probably a million kinds of FBX floating about that aren't catered for, and then whatever is now being produced now has to still work with all the other elements. That's collision, that's material, that's scaling, that's editing, texturing, shading, all that kind of stuff has to be respected. So you can imagine there's quite a lot of work, and for that reason I'm going to announce the immediate work on a version called 1.131. So it's not 0.14, which is the easy building editor. I feel it's important that we get FBX correct, in at least be able to import all the kinds of static stuff that you want, and that it's textured and that it works right, and you can actually widget it about. I mean, I think we can rotate, but we can't really scale, and we can certainly position. So we're going to have to drill down into scale at some point, but not now, because just because that works, that doesn't mean the next object's going to work, which will be, what do we know? That doesn't completely mess up. All right, about Chur.fbx. This is one I bought. I bought it as part of a pack of FBX objects with some really nice high quality textures. You can see the textures for it, 8 meg and 10 meg, so really high quality textures. Chur.fbx, let's see what happens. Okay, so that scale wasn't too bad. I mean, it's a little miniature right now, but we can see legs, so we have a pretty decent chance of, I think the chair will probably be about that big, and the knees where the seat is. So that's a good size. Now we can give it a texture. So this is the first time because this chair was all over the place. It was like a mile away in that direction. With the new mesh consolidator and centering system, it's the first time I've actually seen it in the importer, so it's pretty cool. Chur.d, you notice when I originally got the pack from, I can't remember the site, but it was a really nice one. They were provided in TIFF format, TIFF, and I converted them in Paint Shop Pro to .png, and I turned the diffuse into an _D, the normal into an _N, and the specular TIFF into an _S, because that's what Game Guru expects. And if you put them all in the same name, the same naming convention, it will use all three for your final entity. So there's our cool looking at Chur. We're going to set it as polygon collision. It's a static. It's not a character. We're going to use the entity basic shader. Don't use any scripts. The material will be metal and no transparency. So that looks pretty good. So we'll save that. We'll call it a Chur. This should be a large improvement on the last time I did this. So we can actually go in our thumbnail of it now. So that drops in. Bum, ba, ba, dum, bum, bum, bum. Okay, cool. So again, there it is. That it's at 45 degrees. There's something odd about that. I'm not sure what it is. But because I don't see it in any of the FBX viewers, I mean, I'll show you now. If I go in to the Chur, this is Autodesk FBX converters. As I said, FBX has been going for years. There's different versions. You may need to upgrade your FBX to go into certain tools. I'm trying to the approach that I'll support every FBX and just deal with the pain of that. But it provides a little viewer, and what you can do is just drag it in. Now you've noticed this isn't at 45 degrees. This is, you know, north, south, east and west. You're actually looking at it along the z-axis, and it's facing into the negative x. That's where that's looking. If I did the same in Maya and imported the ch, again you can see your little symbol there. Z is sort of this way and X is this way, and it's facing negative X. Again, not rotated at 45 degrees. And if you look at the mesh properties for it, there's no rotations that could explain it. There's only a little scaling factor, but that's about it. So, once more, another mystery to unravel. All in good time. But like I said, I don't really want to bore the pants off people. I just wanted to give you a little glimpse that in just 20 odd minutes, how little progress can be made working with this stuff. I'll just pick a character just to give ourselves a sense of proportional scale, because we're in debug mode. It's going to take a while because these characters are huge, and so they don't run around trying and attack us. We'll change him to a nice neutral and just run that. Notice there's some transparency going on in the chur. There's only one reason that could be, is because there's something going on with the alpha channel of the diffuse texture. I remember I imported these textures from somewhere else. Maybe someone was using the alpha channel for something other than transparency. Yeah, a little bit of a ghostly chur there, but not too difficult to solve. Little doll's house. And again, yeah, you can see it. Now, that's a lot of polygons in there, actually. It's got normal map. I mean, if I go to some higher, let's just really try and show these normals up. With the transparency there, it's really getting in the way of, there you go. Can you see the little cloth? The way like the fabric of the cloth is like pulled out. That's actually the normal map. Looks pretty cool. But that transparency would really wow me up. Tell you what I'll do, I'll save this out. And let's see if we can eliminate that transparency. chur_d.png, but that's not where it is. It's a chur, isn't it? A chur. And let's show us what texture you're going to use, which is chur_d.png, which is there. Open that up. Ugh, what's all that? Close all previous attempts. Open up that one. Look at the mask. We can see it's all full of, I don't know what you would call it, but we don't want it. So what we're going to do is clear this, create a new image, save that as a mask, delete the old one and replace it with the new one. Then paste back the original diffuse. You notice there's no shadows baked into this. So this would make a really good, you know, physically based rendered diffuse source. So there could be some nice crossover. As we add FBX support, we're going to have support for all these really cool high quality textures. So we've saved that, so really it should just be a case of starting a new map, thus wiping out all the entities and the associated textures. This might still work, maybe it still holds the texture, but we'll see. Because it thinks once you've loaded a texture, why would I get rid of it? Only for you to load it back in, it's a waste of time, so it just holds a copy of the texture and it speeds up the process. But in doing so, if you've changed the file, maybe that isn't updated. I think it is. But this will be the test. There's no way that transparency can still be there. I've just erased all the alpha channel data. So like I said, this may be a two-prong broadcast, with the first half on horribly impossible to understand what Lee's talking about FBX. Yeah, you can see the transparency is still there. So let's leave Guru, and we'll jump back in it. And it will absolutely have no idea that it used to have that alpha channel data, and the chirk should come out solid. So yeah, I'm going to have a just look on the chat board to see if people are absolutely glazing over, or whether they want me to jump over to watching, to tweaking the platform script and having characters jumping up and down on it. Starting at the top. Hi everyone, hello, yo. Everyone's just saying their hellos. So skip past all that. Pirate Mike, dragging FBX files into the editor. You know, once we've got enough FBX variants supported, and we can actually see a lot of different FBX working through the importer, I don't see any reason why we can't drag them straight in. In fact, there has been a suggestion that in addition to browsing for FPE files when you click Add New Entity, if you have any folders with FBX files in them, it would actually just list all those out immediately. Now, obviously, you don't have thumbnails unless you've provided them, but it would allow you to browse a whole folder full of FBX files, select the file name that you're interested in, and then it just drags it in and you can use it straight away. You don't have to embellish it with entity details. You can just grab it as raw geometry and just drop it in to your level, scale, rotate and position it, and then get another one. It's a great idea. I don't have any objections to that, but I want to get the FBX core, you know, converter working at least, you know, decently. I don't think it'll ever support 100% of FBX files, because there's some FBX files out there that aren't supported by Maya, for example. So, but I think we can get the majority of them okay. So there's our chair that we created. Are we still going to be treated with transparency? Are we going to be wound up? No, it's solid. We have a solid chair. I've just noticed. Now that might be a clue, boys and girls. Look, it's not 45 degrees, is it? It's, I don't know, it's 40 degrees or something. You know what I suspect? Only suspect. What if the rotation that's specified was, say, radians instead of degrees? That would spin this object around about 30 times, and then it might end up with this sort of, correct this sort of slant. That's an interesting thought. And just to make sure we can see normals from different angles, we'll do that. We'll set the entities to high, I mean the shaders to high, and then we'll see what it looks like. But I bet you're asking, well, what are you messing about this FBX for? You've got a big list of voting board stuff, and FBX ain't on it. Well, there's always been this call to improve the visuals of Game Guru, and I always maintain that, you know, it's as much about the assets that you bring in, and replace all the default ones, you know. So you replace the terrain with your own textures, the sky with your own sky, the objects static and dynamic with your own stuff, and that would improve the overall visuals. But then, you know, that argument doesn't really stand up, because it usually devolves into, well, provide better assets, please. But literally, assets, they cost an absolute fortune. I mean, this chair on its own, some guy probably spent a week just carefully crafting it, making sure that it was really nice. And that's a week of a professional or a semi-professional artist time. You're probably talking about 600 quid just for create that one chair. I mean, and that's just one object. So to provide very high quality assets in the thousands would take, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds or hundreds of thousands of days. So adding FBX support gives you access to already an existing, you know, cacophony of objects that we don't have to create, that you can find on the internet and then bring in. So that's the plan, really. Now, I think that shadow is a bit crude. Let's just get rid of that shadow for now. You can see it's nice from a distance, the shadow, but when you get a little bit closer, when you really want to scrutinise, you can just see, because of the technique, the way it works with the depth buffer from the camera, sorry, from the sun's position looking down at the scene, you are going to get that distance there between that and that is the resolution of the depth map. And the resolution's already, you know, I think 32-bit float, so it's quite a high resolution. But there is a technique that I know about where what happens is it uses a different depth map for objects you're looking at really up close. So when you go really up close to something, it actually uses sort of a shadow camera that's a lot closer to the object, so the resolution of the depth map can allow almost per pixel shadowing. So that's a really cool technique, but it takes up a little bit more video memory, and there's no big call for, you know, please improve this particular artifact, which is why you get the pleasure of seeing those little flickery bits from time to time. But on the whole, yes, it's not a very colourful object, but I do like the normal map. Yeah, and the texture, the specular is not really coming through. You'd expect a super shiny chair, and I'm seeing super not very shiny anything. So there's a question to be asked there. I mean, is it the shader because I've ramped global specular to the top? Is it the _S specular texture? You know, or maybe the one of the channels is empty, which is why it's dulling out for some reason. But yeah, I set this so these chairs should be super shiny, and they're not. So that's another thing I'd like to look at. But not before I go to the chat board, as I was doing earlier. Constantly distracted with all this wonderful FBX stuff. To see if anyone wants to talk about floating platforms. So, I'll just read through. Maybe there are relevant questions about what I was talking about or what I can talk about in the next 20 minutes. This is from the Con Marine. Hey, probably a stupid question, and I think I know the answer, but will there ever be an option in Game Guru to make 2D games? Go onto the forums, look for Retro Game Bloke's latest post. He's actually made Space Invaders in Game Guru, but you have to be a bit of a Lewis scripter to be able to do that. In the future, you'll be able to have a sort of a non-scripting way to configure some scripts. And if that script happens to be a Space Invaders game or a top-down racing game or whatever it is that you want in 2D, then this sort of front-end GUI to that script might allow you to customize that game. And there may be things like that in the future. And probably written by the community, because I'm just going to provide the interfaces and the commands, and it's the community that's going to create all these variations and different bits and bobs. So yes, I think there will be a lot of 2D games in the future, but it won't necessarily be me that writes it. It'll be me writing the underlying mechanics and building blocks, and then the community takes over and creates any kind of 2D game you ever want. And the Space Invaders is pretty cool. It's got upgrade weapons and multiple levels. It's pretty awesome. So do check that out. It's on the forums. Oh, actually, a Pirate Mark on the live actually posted a thread, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to put it in my broadcast because it's cool to share. Ping, ping, ping. I hope it's to the Space Invaders one. Yeah, Alien Invasion, a game in a game. So, in case you haven't got time to follow the link yourself, you've actually got Space Invaders.
Moved on from the...
She's awesome. So, moving on, from question from Deadpool785 Ollie. When will Game Guru go on offer, like for $8.99 on Steam? I think there is an offer on. It's not on Steam. It's on. I think it's on Bundle Stars. So type it Bundle Stars on Google. That offer might still be on. If you've missed that, probably in the next 10 weeks there may be another offer on Game Guru. But there's always an offer. You just have to go out and find it. The Bundle Stars is the last one I knew about, and there may be a promotion in the next 10 weeks on the core Game Guru itself. So yeah, if you're low on funds, all you got to do is wait, and you can still join the forum and do research and maybe get all your assets together and your sounds, and then when it's on offer again, boom, you can get it bought, and then you can start making your games. Scrolly, let's see what else is on the chat. White Quill, what is it supposed to look like when it isn't importing correctly? What's it supposed to look like when it isn't importing correctly? Upside down, no texture, invisible, or messed up. Any of the above. It's quite random, really, what you get. But yeah, when it looks right, you know it's right because it's the right way up and the texture applies to it perfectly and the UVs aren't reversed and things like that. Pirate Mark says, I like your hack to make the FBX data come in right. Yeah, I think it is a hack. Eventually I'm going to see the light and realise that I can do it in another way. But then it supports all the other sort of FBX models, which will probably object to a hack like that. But I have read somewhere, and I was always kind of familiar that certainly when I was doing things like Blender and some other modelers, that there were different coordinate systems, and just because Y is up in Game Guru doesn't mean Y is up in all the modelers, and Y could be Z, which is going into the screen, and then Z could be up, as you see, so this sort of coordinate toggle. But as we go on, and then there'll be other models that aren't been toggled, then maybe we have something importer which you can choose whether or not to toggle that original mesh data as you import it. I think we will have that if models start coming in that don't need toggling. But the building worked, you know, pat myself on the back, that's there, apart from the scaling, which is horrid. So I might reintroduce the scaling and have some sort of camera zoom for the importer, just so you can see that massive building. The reason when you imported it with the scaling in place is it was so big, you was actually seeing inside the building. And so you didn't actually get to see anything, because the building was like around the camera. That's why you didn't see it. Scrolling on through the chat here. How goes the napkins? In a forum post I said I will be starting the easy building editor by sketching all my designs on a napkin. That's going okay. I've not actually got to the point of getting me napkins out yet. I've actually been doing research, so I've been watching what other people have been doing, like in Planet Coaster and Fallout 4, and going back to what we've done in the past and all our failed prototypes along the way, and what Game Guru does right now to create pseudo buildings, and just getting a feel for what is the right thing to do. I don't want to rush in. I can implement anything, but I don't want to rush in and implement the wrong thing only for everybody to hate it and for me to throw it away 6 months from now. I want it to be something that's super simple, creates nice buildings, but gives you lots of flexibility to then add on and do other things. And it really has to have that ability to have multiple stories, so you can run in through a door, run up some stairs, jump out the window, something like that. That really, and it has to be done within minutes. You got to be able to make buildings in minutes. The construction kit failed really because it took quite a long time to make a building, because you had to put each individual wall section in. And if you look at some of the Fallout 4 make your own buildings, that suffers the same problem. It takes a very long time to create a building, and even when you're finished, all the buildings have a sort of a same sort of scale. You know, they're all like the 100 grids. And there's been a lot of requests that we shouldn't do that again. Don't force people to be on these 100 grids. What if you wanted a longer section of building and you didn't want it divisible by 100? So considerations like this are going into my thought processes. Plus, this week's been pretty busy as we finished 1.13, all the flood of non-update codey things came in that also needed to be dealt with by me, and so it's vastly slowed down, you know, getting to the actual codey part. And of course, I don't need to mention it, that I'm doing the FBX, which is version 1.131, sorry, because I think there's a great advantage in having a great import FBX experience, and it isn't there yet. So I'm pretty and also you're going to get to bring in some really nice graphics, and hopefully I'll be able to show that in a future broadcast and vindicate myself as to why I'm spending so much time on FBX. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information on that. I've got a question from Hawkslayer 2016. Hi Lee, it's me again. In the editor, can we group entities together and make a new grouped entity, maybe a future update? Yeah, that's planned. It's not on the voting board, but it's on my own personal list. It's not a massive job, but it has some ramifications that could mess other things up. But yeah, the idea to range select and then do like a copy paste, so you can leave the original alone and then paste groups of entities down in one go, that's definitely on my own private wish list. So it's going to go in the next. It might probably sneak into the 1.14 update, because it is related, isn't it, to grabbing entities and the building all in one go and then pasting 10 versions of that building with its furniture all over the place. So I think they'll probably get snuck into 1.14 because that's the right time to do it. Like Quail, just add something, you can just type, then number, you just need to scale. Yeah, I think I will change the scale thing to type a number instead of that horrid red bar that you have to scroll 50 million times to make it do anything. It's just some questions relating to something I'm doing at the time, but it's out of context, so I won't be able to answer that. Pirate Mike's suggestible face mapping on the original model on the building, that's why it was flickering. I think that's highly likely the case. A lot of modelers don't mind having double polygons, and they won't actually show it flicker. But in a games engine, you really can't. You can't cross the streams, as it were. You don't put two polygons over top of each other. It's pretty redundant, unless you want to make them almost completely transparent. I've got a big long question here from ManAlive 2000. I have got an entity that uses multiple textures. They do not get copied to standalone, so I have to do it manually, but they obviously aren't encrypted. Is there any way to encrypt them or have them copied automatically? Yeah, there is. You could... Oh, yeah, because it's a good idea. What you really want is something in the FPE where you can specify all the textures. So you could, something like a texture reference 1, and then the name of that, texture reference 2, texture reference 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and put all the names of all the textures that that model's going to use. Now the model loads those textures itself, it doesn't need to read the FPE for that, but you'd still need the FPE in order to, although thinking about it, you could actually use the same mechanism that the engine uses to load in the textures, to scan every X file, scan every model to see what textures it has buried inside it, the texture references, and then look for those files and copy and encrypt those. Problem is, you'd be interrogating every single model file. It would slow down the save standalone process. I think that's why I didn't do it. So putting the references inside the FP is probably a smart move. So if you want to send me an email on that, lee@thegamecreators.com. Just quick email, just say, Lee, remember texture references in FPE to encrypt multi-texture objects. The reason I want you to send me the email, the reason I'm going to put it into my shortlist, is that's also something else you probably want in the FBX sort of super support, because a lot of FBX files I've been looking at have lots of textures applied to one model, and you're going to want all of that in your standalone. You don't want to be messing about with file after file, file after file, I should say. He continues, I've got a building made from a single model. Characters don't walk through the walls. They seem to be able to see the player and shoot through walls. Any ideas? Well, yeah, the building does need to be a single mesh if possible, or several meshes but welded tight so there's no gaps between them. And then, providing you set them up as, there's no reason why the character will be able to shoot through. The only reason is if, for some reason, the building is offset, and then there's some transforms that move it back to 0, 0. And then, of course, the visibility bit, which casts the ray through the object, it actually detects bound boxes first. But if the object meshes in such a way that the bound box isn't where the building is, then potentially there could be a ray cast straight through the building and hit the player. But that's a model you'd really have to send me for me to confirm exactly what it is. But yeah, there's a million and one ways you can mess up model geometry so that it does strange things in the engine. That's why pipeline is so very important, and is a large part of a new game development, to make sure that there's only one way to create an asset and that the engine only supports that one kind of asset. With Game Guru, we're really opening the door to say you can bring in any asset you could possibly imagine, create, or accidentally generate, and then somehow we have to get it in and looking great and working. It's a huge ask, but it's not beyond our skills. We just need those models that aren't cooperating yet, so then we can test them ourselves and do something about it. So email me that model@thegamecreators.com and I will check it out and see why you can fire through it, although it sounds very odd. Moving on, is there any other questions? We're getting to quite at the bottom of the chat now, which is good, because we're almost up on the hour after I've had a quick look at platforms. Well, no one's asked for platforms, so I guess we're okay with what we've been waffling on about. And Synchromesh adds, most would not recommend multi-texture, so probably not a priority. Manual is better than nothing, though. Yeah, manual, but then you're not encrypting your files, and you probably not want that to happen, so you don't want to distribute your standalone. But you can put all your stuff in manually and then encrypt the whole lot with a exe packer. And what that will do, it will take your executable, all your files, all your media, everything, pack them into one executable and encrypt it at the same time. So no one can get at your media, even if you drag them in manually as unencrypted. But send me that email and I'll add it to my list, because I think it's not too difficult to add, and it's very important if we're going to protect people's work when you release your standalone executables. Even if you don't know they're being encrypted, it's good to know that, you know, you've got that assurance. White Quill says, I'm a 3D artist. Do you need anybody to check the geometry? I always need artists. I have a ravenous appetite for artists, but they always leave me in the end. So yeah, if you want to pitch in at this level on the 1.131, I'll be running a beta shortly and showing people the progress of the FBX, and these are the models that work. These are the ones I'm still working on. If you would like to pitch in on that, just every time I'm really stuck with what this model is and what the data is and stuff, I can send it to you and then you can tell me what's going on. That would be awesome. Just send me an email, lee@thegamecreators.com, and I'll include you in the beta program. That should start next week. We'll be sending out the first beta 1 of 1.131 next week, and you can have a play around with the improved FBX importer. Is there a site where I can find free entities? This is from Cooler41D. Yes, just go to the Game Guru forum where I am right now. Go to the product chat, scroll through. A lot of people talk about assets. I think there's a zip somewhere with 1,000 free game assets in it. You can download that and start populating your games with those. So it just takes a bit of a search and you'll find them. Oh, my chat window has moved a lot. Okay, here we go. White Quill says hundreds of thousands of hours. It does take hundreds of thousands of hours to create, let's say, the graphic content of Uncharted 4. How many hours would it take to create every single graphic to that level of quality? It ain't done in a weekend, put it that way. Storm 36969, new user, movement tab such as ala BO3, wall running, and AW boosting. Yeah, sure. I mean, those are pretty advanced control systems. What we're going to do is externalize the player control system into script. So it's going to be pretty much the same player control system that you've got now, but you'll be able to see all the script line by line. What does that mean? That means you can go in and then add your own bits and pieces. If you want to do wall running, you can code it yourself because you've got access to the script. You won't need me to add it for you. You or someone else in the community can add it directly and get it running without waiting for an update. So that's the plan for that. As is the plan to externalize the weapon system, the object management system, more of the AI system, and anything else that we consider to be hard-coded and doesn't need to be, and by externalizing it, people can have that level of flexibility they currently don't have, or would have, but they'd have to wait until I actually get around to adding it. So watch out for that. It might happen sooner than you think. As soon as the big thing off the voting board, which deals with player controls, maybe something to do with third person or something like that, that's the time when I bite the bullet and I externalize the whole lot. I won't do it before then, because I really want to respect the sort of the list, the voting list, as much as possible, and I can't start picking things as I see fit. The whole point of the voting board is that you get to pick what big feature is going to be next. And doing the player control system externalization might take a week, and that's a week away from doing the things that people, the majority, want to see. So moving down to almost the end of the chat, Storm also asks, any plans to move to DirectX 12 display systems as well, or at least 11, as the last build I looked at was not impressed at all with the visuals looked, aka DirectX 9. Yeah, reason it looks like DirectX 9, because it's DirectX 9. But there's a lot more we can do with the visuals on DirectX 9, as I've been starting in another thread. There are plans to upgrade the whole graphics pipeline and technology, but that's been backburnered whilst we deal with what we eventually determined was the real needs of the majority of the community. People want to see things finished off. They want a better terrain system, more games, more things you can do in the games, more game genres, better editing tools, better ways to edit things and faster ways to edit things. And those little niceties that, we really ought to see, like swimming and going underwater and all that kind of cool stuff. So yeah, there's some big building blocks that are absent, and the community has decreed we should put those back in before we start going for some huge graphical overhaul. And if you look at the voting board, which is your temperature gauge for how much people want a massive graphics overhaul, it's not top of the list. It's sort of scattered in the midriff of the voting board right now. So that's really it reflects what the community are really after, and I don't think they would appreciate me dropping all these core additions to the functionality and then going off and doing some eye candy, and then you have a pretty looking simple game that has glaringly missing features in it. So hopefully that sheds a bit more light as to my thinking on next gen graphics technology. Plus the fact it's a huge job and it would take months and months and months, and that's months and you won't actually see anything apart from some pretty screenshots, and the update will be like far in the future. And everyone likes lots and lots of updates, an update every month, an update every 6 weeks. You know, this is what people like. So it's going to be pretty tricky to squeeze that one in. But nil desperandum, I have a few ideas, and I'll spring those on you when the time comes before the end of the year. Another hour for platforms, maybe. Yeah, the is it Conmarine? No, the Conmain wants me to spend another broadcast hour talking about platform floating around stuff like that. What if I could? But I don't know if you know this, but I live in Wales, and we've been living in storms for 3 months. And since Monday, the sun has come out and it's all gorgeous. So I have a barbecue planned. And I'm afraid barbecue trumps broadcast any day of the week. However, I will bear it in mind. I think it's probably deserving of a whole hour, and I'll think about doing a broadcast on that. Now, before I leave you, because there's only 5 minutes left, and I'll answer the other questions on the chat, I'll hopefully get to all of them. There'll be another broadcast tomorrow. But it's not really for Game Guru users, but you may want to tune in anyway, just for morbid curiosity. There's this big movement by my little company, the Game Creators, to find Tier 2 programs for AGK, and we're offering up a bounty of £500 if you will create little teeny-weeny educational mini-games. But there's a sort of a shortage of Tier 2 AGK users. But a lot of Tier 1 users, you know, the basic sort of version of AGK, which is really fun to use and results are rapid. So my Twitch will be about taking all your Tier 1 knowledge and actually converting it and be able to write in Tier 2. So, you know, showing you how that's possible. And for those who aren't just Game Guru users and are taking an interest in games in general, AGK is pretty good to take to that next level where you can go cross-platform with your creative ideas and your creations and whatever it is you want to make. And if you've learned Tier 1, you're ready for Tier 2, which is C++ and Visual Studio and better debugging and all that, then the Twitch tomorrow, same time, 4 PM GMT, will cover a few of those issues, and I'll probably do that every Thursday for a couple of weeks until I think the message got across and I don't need to waffle on the subject much longer. But I'll look at my calendar, and if there's a possibility to do a Twitch on Friday, 4 PM GMT, on platforms, I will let you know in advance. I'll post it in advance on the forums and on Steam, and so you're not going to miss the chance to get a free broadcast, because they're only every Wednesday at 4 PM GMT. It's unheard of that I actually do 2 in a week. But look, I'm already doing 2 because of this AGK thing. May as well do 3. If you're going to do 2, you may as well do 3. So there's a question, this is a question mark, from MX2035. Sorry, the colour lime green isn't great against light grey. Very difficult to read. Does the Xbox 360 controller work in Game Guru? Which Xbox 360 controller? There's a few of them. I've got one and it works. You just have to set Xbox flag to 1. There are other controllers that you set Xbox flag to 1 and it doesn't work, or it doesn't support all the buttons, or it does things in a way that you don't agree with. There is on my list, because it's not a huge job, I just need someone to send me a link to the Xbox controller they're using, that when they set Xbox flag to 1 in the setup.ini, it doesn't do anything. And if you've discovered a device that, you know, doesn't cooperate with you, then give me a link to the device so I can buy it. and then give me a list of things that you expected to happen and didn't happen. So the controls you used and what happens in the game, but what you expected to happen. Like I said, it's not a hard thing to implement, and it has been requested a few times, so it's probably going to go on the mini list that goes into one of the next couple of updates. So yeah, email me, lee@thegamecreators.com, and then you can sort that out. Yeah, I'm being told off. GMT, I shouldn't keep calling it GMT, it's British Summertime, BST, but that's absolutely fine. I shouldn't really be using GMT at all, it's just I'm used to it by now. Yes, we are using BST, British Summer Time. That's 4 p.m. BST, not GMT. But I will continue to make this mistake until someone hits me over the head with a hammer with the date stamped on it. We're getting yays for barbecues. No Guinness. No, I can't have Guinness as much as I used to because it's 20 grams of carbs per Guinness, and I can't have that many carbs these days. So maybe I can have one. Maybe drink it slow so I can enjoy it. And that's the end of the questions. And I'm looking at the clock and I've got 2 minutes to spare. So hopefully that was useful. You got to be of an insight into just the horrible, painful life of a games engine developer and how completely unrewarding it is for the most part. And you only get a slight pat on the head when things actually work to a minimum level. But I'm going to continue plugging away at this. This is my number one priority. This is going to be the main focus for the next release, which is 1.131. And I'm aiming to get all the static things that anyone ever sends me working great in Game Guru. I think maybe I was biting off more than I can chew, but set all FBX, including skinned animated ones. Having studied this a little bit closer, I think just getting all the static stuff, textured, oriented, looking right, scaled, with a slightly better importer, so you can actually tweak what you're doing when you're in there. I think those will be the real, improvements for that update. And then I'll just see who's left really screaming about skin stuff. I have done skinning; it's actually in there. I've actually got all the skinning stuff working with like one door. But as soon as someone sent me a character, that character looked absolutely weird, and then somebody sent me some other construct, and that was upside down and inside out. So that's a lot more fun for the future. Might be included in 1.131. Depends how quickly I'm succeeding with the static mesh stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Sorry if I actually absolutely bored you to tears on this one. I promise I won't do this again. It was just I was already in the throes of doing the coding, so I thought I would inflict it. Problem shared, problem halved. So until tomorrow, not until next week, until tomorrow, that's Thursday, 4 p.m. BST. I'll see you then, but if you can't make it or you don't want to make it because AGK holds no interest for you, it will be next Wednesday, 4 p.m. BST. So until then, I shall say goodbye.